So hello guys, welcome to our the 17th monthly meeting of the UK MTB Trail Alliance. And in a moment I'll hand over to sister brother duo Charlie Kingswood and Alex Evans, who'll tell us the story of Hafod Trails, a new bike park that opened last Easter on the edge of the Brechfa Forest in Carmarthenshire in southwest Wales. So Charlie and Alex will talk us through their journey of getting a new bike park set up and open to the public, what they learned from their first year of operations, and more recently how they cope with the impact of Storm Darragh. And probably a bit more than that as well. We shall see. We'll then move on to a Q&A with Charlie and Alex, and where we'll all give you a chance to ask any burning questions you have. And then towards the end of the call, if we have time, we'll give you all a chance to share anything you need help or advice on and benefit from the group's experience. But this time around, I'm gonna have a hard time limit of 9:30, so an hour, just under an hour and a half. Just so everyone can get back to their Easter holidays. So before we start though, a bit of housekeeping. If you could use the little hands up icon at the bottom of the screen so I know you want to speak, that would be great, and I'll call people in turn. And most importantly, when you ask your question, say who you are and what group you're from. And can I also ask that you leave your video on during the call so everyone can see each other, but obviously please stay muted unless you're speaking. And please change your display name to include the organisation you represent. So, for example, you can see my little name on screen is Robin Grant, UK MTB Trail Alliance. And having said that, I shall hand over to Charlie.
Thank you very much. Right, I am going to share my screen a moment. Bear with me. Give me one sec. Okie dokie. So I have tried to keep this as brief as I can for you, with hopefully still giving you all a little bit of insight into what we've done and how we've done it. So we're going to rewind what is now 3 years since this journey begun, which is quite crazy. So it all started with a little trail that we put in for my children. So myself and my husband Tom, who isn't here at the moment, but he's the third of our trio. We have 3 kids, and they're all mad about mountain biking, and so we started off by literally putting a little trail in for them, and it grew to what is now today Hafod Trails, and obviously we are still growing. We're still just only a year into the journey of the bike park, so to speak. So so that's one of the aforementioned children just there. So this gives you a little bit of an idea where we are. So the kind of darker grey or darker green area to the left on the map there, to the west, that is Brechfa Forest. Brechfa itself is an amazing area and venue for mountain biking. And outdoor sports generally, really. There's lots of horse riding, walking, and all sorts of things that go on here. And one of our concerns, I guess, when we thought about doing this first, was how far west we were. Because we're, if we're talking about centres of population, we were further away than I guess not that we were intending, but it was a little bit of a concern. But actually, we were very surprised when we were sort of finding out where people were coming from and all the rest of it. And we get an awful lot of people travelling east to us, which is not something that we were necessarily expecting. We've gotten people from all around the UK that have come to visit us, and actually the furthest away was New Zealand, wasn't it? Not specifically to come to us, but while he was in the UK, he made a point of coming to see us, which was amazing. So that's us. There we are, right on the side of of Brechfa Forest. So these are 2 of my 3 children. Alex is in the background there, and then Tom, my husband, is just by the 2 boys. So they are, how old are they? They're 3 and 6 there, and then the eldest one at that time would have been 8. So that's them. They love a bit of trail building, do my boys, and they've taken a huge interest in it. You can see over there, so this is basically just a field that we had spare, essentially, that wasn't being used for anything else. So we thought, oh, we'll just put in a little put in a little bit of a trail, and then, as I say, the rest is history. So moving on now to, this is 23, wasn't it? So the following year, early 23, we were approached by Richard from Western Bike Events, who was looking for venues to host his Enduro series, which obviously is no longer running. I think that's a huge shame when the sport loses something like that. But yeah, so we agreed to host an event for him. We'd actually penciled it in for June 24, hadn't we? But the forestry work in Avan basically meant that it was a whole year earlier than we were expecting, or he was anticipating, wasn't it? Because he kind of gave us a phone call and said, I can't do my 4th round in Avan. Any chance that you might be able to bring it forward a year? So we kind of did. And we pulled off 5 trails. We built all 5 in 10 weeks, which was pretty mental. But not just the trail building, we had to do car parking and all sorts of things in that time, wasn't it? So it was all a little bit mental, but the whole weekend was a massive success, which made us think maybe we could make a go of it and make it work for us as a bike park. I mean, obviously changes needed to be made to the venue, but ultimately the start of the trails were there, so that was kind of handy. So this is a couple of pics from the event, from the day of the event. So this is race day, and it was so cool to have. It was such a buzzing atmosphere. It was absolutely cracking, really good couple of days, even if it was a bit of a busy run up to it. So fast forward a few months, and we decided to apply for planning permission. So we put the application in at the very end of September. I think it was the 22nd or 21st, I think it was, of September. And when you're in that moment, it seemed like it was taking forever, but it was actually only a matter of a few months. But as I said, anybody that's gone through planning permission in any way knows how frustrating it is when you feel like you've got a million things that you're trying to juggle and sort of get together. But we were granted planning permission on the 24th of January. So actually it did only take a few months. We were totally blown away by the amount of support that we had from our local community, and actually further afield as well. So on our application, there were over 100 consultation responses from members of the public, and every single one of them was positive. We had no negative consultation responses at all, which is, well, as I say, we were completely blown away by it, which also just proves that there is a need for this sort of thing, not just here, but in, places all around. So that was that. And so fast forward to January, when we got the planning permission, it was then literally all hands to the pump just to try to kind of get open as quickly as we could. So I've just got a couple of pictures here just to show you some of the build process. So this was relatively early on. So this was pretty much as soon as we got planning permission, we kind of cracked on with a couple of new trails, and sort of general sort of improvements. For anybody, I don't think anyone on the call today has actually been to our site, but we're quite lucky that we have some relatively not valuable woodland, which provides all the benefits of woodland, but without sort of destroying habitats of nice trees and things like that. We have some, basically half the trails are going through the woodland, and at the top we have an area of which currently feels that we've planted up. So eventually the whole site will be wooded. But we planted, 3,400 trees. So yeah, we planted a lot of trees as well. So just going through here, give you a bit of an idea, new trails going in. And then we ended up basically opening in May 24, so last year, just after last Easter. Just incidentally, we've got some very wet bits on our site, so we've gone proper old school here with some of the trail building methods. So this is a raft, a floating raft essentially, that the trail then is built on top of. So that gives you a bit of an idea of some of the work that's gone into it. But it's Alex here that does the majority of the digger work. You can see my husband Tom there. He's a dab hand with a trail tool and a whacker plate. So between the three of us, we all kind of bring something to the party, don't we? So whilst all of the trail building was going on and we were doing everything that we needed to do to actually build a functioning bike park, which doesn't just include trails, as you probably all well know, there's all the background stuff that needs to happen as well. You need to have facilities and you need to have all of your paperwork in place. So I spent many happy hours writing all of the operating procedures and the emergency action plans and the traffic management plans and all that kind of jazz. Some of it obviously had to be done in advance for our planning permission, but a lot of it was then created afterwards. We have had some brilliant support from a small firm called MTB, which is based up in Dergetlau, and Ash there, he's like most amazingly knowledgeable man about all things health and safety and policies and all that. So he was super helpful for us in that whole process, and would recommend him to anybody instantly. So yes, we all sort of went and did our MIAS qualifications. We got qualified with the ATB and got all that kind of sorted and done. So it's been a kind of a multi-pronged approach to what we're doing and how we're going about it. So one of the things that we were kind of quite keen to do is find our own solutions to how best to run an uplift venue. One of the most important things when you come to uplift venues are the method of getting up the hill, funnily enough. So that's my middle child there, stood on one of our uplift trailers that Alex here designed and then fabricated. And so the whole idea is that it's super simple to use. So my youngest kid, who was 4 at the time of that, could load his own bike onto the trailer, which is something that it makes the whole loading and unloading thing really, really easy. Not only that, but it speeds the whole thing up.
Minimises queuing.
Yeah. And one size genuinely does fit all. So we've had tiny little 10-inch bikes on this trailer right the way up to great big custom built sort of huge, great big long rigs and then they all fit. And there's absolutely zero risk of damage because of the way the bikes are loaded. So you don't get that horrible, oh gosh, what's happened to my brake lever at the top of the hill. So that's something that we're quite proud of, and everybody loves the uplift trailer, don't they?
Yep.
Yeah, the feedback is that it's super empowering. I had a lovely lady called Liz who, a couple of weeks of us being open, she and her family came, and she came up, she made a point at the end of the day of coming up to me and saying, I just want to say your uplift trailer is amazing. She said, as a small person, it is so empowering that I've been able to load my bike all day on my own without having to ask a taller person to help me. And I'm not a small person, I'm kind of relatively average, but coming towards the end of the day at a bike park, I'm struggling to get my bike up on one of the kind of upright trailers. So that solves that problem. Other little things like this season for our kind of, I'll tell you what, I'll come on to that in a minute actually, because that's another one of the things that we've tried to think outside the box with. Okay, so moving on from there. So this is a little map of our trails as of last year, but for this year there is going to be a couple of little additions and changes to it. So we opened in May, so it was a fairly crazy few months, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Very busy. But we opened in May with 6 trails, as you can see there, 3 red trails, 2 blues and a black. And then there's just a few pickies here of the various fun and games that we had throughout the season. Generally, people were incredibly complimentary about what we've got here, which is lovely. And that's so exciting because we know that we're on the right track, so to speak, no pun intended. And where we're going and what we're trying to do is the right direction. And it's nice because all the time we're adding more and we're changing. And so from that perspective, it's really nice to have that feedback that what we're doing is along the right lines. So yeah, there's just a few pickies here from various days and people coming along to play. We had a feature that came out in the August edition, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah.
I can't remember now. Of MB UK. We had an absolutely cracking day. It was such fun, where MB UK came to play, and we got a whole load of people here, a whole load of riders that were just stoked on having a brilliant day, which is amazing. And yeah, so it was pretty cool that we had that publicity. So I'm just going to pause there just for a minute. So just to sort of rewind, we closed up shop for the season. We had all of these plans and all of these ideas, that sort of winter developments basically that we wanted to do. And we closed at the end of September. We had a bit of a party, a bit of a kind of closing ceremony, which was all for charity, and we raised £1,200, actually slightly over £1,200 for two local charities, so the Welsh Air Ambulance and also the Western Beacons Mountain Rescue as well. So we shared the profits between those two. We had loads of support from our local bike shops and things like that, which was great. So close of season, started a few changes and developments and bits and bobs.
Yeah, started with a bit of a break because we'd been 6 months flat out, 7 days a week, although we were only open for 2 or 3 depending on the week. There was lots to do. We were playing catch up a little bit, although it'd been a very successful year.
It was phenomenal. We couldn't have asked for better.
No.
We were fully booked every single weekend from May through to September.
Yeah.
We were running with relatively low numbers, self-imposed low numbers, because we wanted to prove it out and make sure that it was working and it was absolutely spot on before we kind of upped the numbers. But it was amazing, but it was full of yeah. So we did a few things around the farm that we needed to do. We had a barn that was falling down, so we started off and we sorted that out, and then we kind of got back on with a bit of trail building and changing and making a few changes and developing a few things. And then the storm happened, and for anybody that is kind of outside of Wales, or certainly West Wales, and obviously parts of Ireland, I know got hit very badly, but it didn't really happen. It wasn't really a thing, but for us it was catastrophic. It was bonkers. The whole thing was just utterly crazy, and it very much a day that will sort of go down in history in this area. People are still talking about it. The damage is still evident in the forest. There's huge areas of Brechfa which are just sideways, they're just not there anymore. So I guess in the scheme of things, we got off relatively lightly, but the 7th of December, as I say, 2024 will go down in local legend as a crazy time. So the first 2 days of the storm, or the first 2 days after the storm, we cleared 2 kilometers of highway. We started off on the bit that our farm is adjacent to. We went to help our neighbours that way, and then we went to help our neighbours that way, and then we cleared about 2 kilometers of highway where there was some really big trees across the road. Luckily, when we have the ability to be able to do it, we teamed up with our neighbour as well, who's a tree surgeon, and we just kind of cracked on and got it done, because nothing could happen until we cleared the road. So the response from National Grid and Welsh Water and Openreach was brilliant, was really good. But it wouldn't have happened if we and people like us hadn't have cleared the roads, because for the council to get out and clear miles and miles and miles of road, it just wouldn't have happened. So we kind of got on and did it, really, I suppose, because you just do. So this is one of the trees that we lost. This is obviously not our digger on the highway. But like I say, it's just one of those things. We had no choice. There's no way that we could have done that by hand. So we put the digger on the trailer and took it on the highway with the big tractor. So it just gives you some idea of this. I mean, this wasn't even the worst bit, was it? No. I don't know whether this sound is going to come through, but I will just play it. The video's super shaky because this was kind of in the middle of the storm. We were very stupidly out in it making a start because there was such a mess. So I actually I didn't really want to be here filming, but I was, and then I kind of made a relatively sharp exit. I don't know whether you can hear that or not, but you can hear the wind.
We're not hearing it at our end, but we are seeing it.
So yeah, it was crazy. It was absolutely mental. We basically got the road clear. When the road was clear, we moved on site. We had to pick somewhere. So we picked our track up, didn't we? Pick the drive.
Access driveway.
Because we'd lost we had a hedge and some trees that were going up the side, and that all just blew over. The crazy thing is, I took so many pictures, and they just don't do it. They just don't do it justice. It was absolutely crazy. So the only flat space that we had to kind of stack the timber and the arisings that we had was our car park. So we moved, what was it, turned out to be 90 tons?
Over 90.
Over 90 tons of windblown timber and brash. As I say, it doesn't give you an idea of scale here. It is quite crazy. But yeah, our whole car park was full of timber that we needed to get chipped. Obviously, we didn't have that kind of machinery to be able to do that, so we did have to get some help in. So a lovely local guy came and helped us, and as I say, 90 tons of stuff went off-site having been chipped, and then we've probably got another 40 to 50 tons of firewood ready to process. But we need some time to do that, and we're a little bit time poor currently. So just a bit of a fun one, really. Here you can see that, hopefully, that a little bit of fun with a time-lapse camera. Incidentally, this is when they'd probably cleared about 3/4 of it already at this point. This is just the last little bit that I managed to kind of catch on a film. So yeah, gives you an idea of it. So fast forward to the end of January. It took us 7 weeks, over 7 weeks, didn't it? Slightly over 7 weeks for the three of us to clear all the timber. There was some damage done to the trails along the way, but we were pretty disciplined, weren't we? We kind of got the timber out, went and repaired the trails, either where root balls have come up and root plates have damaged the trails, or indeed the damage that we did taking the timber out. A lot of it had to be taken out by hand because of just access to the slope. Basically, we couldn't get machinery in, and then a lot of it was taken out by machine, dumper loads of it, just towing stuff out. So we did do a fair bit of damage to a couple of the trails that way, but we've repaired it, and we were kind of back to zero again then, really, weren't we? So we then sort of in January got back to the overwinter plans. So it was really frustrating, but it is one of those things that happened. So we love a shipping container here. As there's a theme, it's coming. You'll see the theme. So we had a couple of shipping containers already on site that were not being used anymore. So we decided to create. We have three basically. We had one here which became a shelter at the top of the hill. So this is just a little bit of a build process here of showing of like how we did it all. As a another time lapse. We do a lot of stuff that kind of warrants time lapses here, but you can see there. So Alex is doing the welding, and we kind of pulled up the side of the container, and then spent a couple of days painting it. So this is it coming up the hill, and that's its sort of final resting place at the top of the hill. So there's nothing worse if you've got a mechanical or a problem, or even indeed if it's just Welsh changeable weather, and there's no shelter at the top of the bike park. So it was quite important to us to see if we could put something up there. And to our knowledge, I think we're the only bike park with a trailhead shelter. So there you go. And then we've got a kind of bike tool station there as well, because there is nothing worse than trying to fix a mechanical when it's sideways rain and all the rest of it. So at least you can do it in the dry in there, or the comparative dry. So that's container number one. So again, this is all the kind of overwinter plans that we had. This is our catering solution for 24 versus what will be, it's coming on really well, our catering solution for 25 onwards. So we took container number 2, and we basically, Alex made these really cool bifold doors that open up. So sort of 2/3 of that space is going to be a kitchen area, and 1/3 is going to be customer sort of service area. So we can, we've just got a little bit more space to play with, because one of the things, given our location, that's really important is to have super good, really nice, affordable food on site, because the nearest shop is 15 minutes drive away. So we can't kind of get people on site and then expect them to always remember to bring their lunch or disappear off site to go get food. So for us, it was really important. So we have a very nice, simple menu, but really good locally sourced food where we can. So this is hopefully just going to be kind of like a slightly better option for people. And then we have a third container, which we haven't started yet because of Darragh, which is going to become our kind of reception welcome area. And also we're going to have a sort of small amount of merchandise in there as well, aren't we? Yeah. As well as a bike emergency repair area, so we can help people with keeping their bikes going for the day, which is something that we do anyway. We just do it in a slightly different way, but it's nice to have a sort of a hub with some tools and things that we can help people. But we've lent people all sorts of things, haven't we, from a whole wheel to somebody, didn't we?
To a whole bike.
To a whole bike, actually, yes, because we're nice like that, because ultimately if somebody's taken the time to come and visit us and see us, it's really important that they get the most out of the day to us. And given that we are a small, family run business, that's the very least that we can do. That's kind of how we see it. So this is going to be the Grubhub Mark II for this year. So as well as the various facilities that we were hoping to develop over the winter, we had aspirations to build three trails. Yeah,
3 trails.
That, needless to say, sadly hasn't happened. We are getting on very, very well with one of the 3 that we planned. So we are designing it and pretty sure that we're on the money with it as a green trail, because that's something that it's kind of, our hill is relatively steep in places, isn't it? So it was always going to be a challenging build, but we felt it was quite important for our clients and the people, our visitors and the people that come to see us. Because we have ended up kind of catering for the masses, really, haven't we? Where we get kind of people right at the very beginning of their off-road MTB journey, right the way through to kind of seasoned racers actually that come here to do their race prep and things like that, which is brilliant. But as I say, we wanted something that's sort of more catering towards the beginner end of the spectrum, and it is turning out to be an absolute corker of a trail. It's really good fun, and I don't think anybody, you know, that had a higher sort of ability, that I think they'd be quite happy riding down it too.
Definitely.
Yeah, so kind of sort of crosses a lot of the T's and dots the I's really for a lot of people, which is great. So obviously for anybody that's ever built any trails, the easier the grade, the more work essentially that goes into building it. So we've got the more complex and more difficult, more time consuming one done first and ticked off. But it's been quite a challenge in some ways to build it, hasn't it?
Very wide, awful lot of aggregate going into it. And yeah, just fighting the gradient all the way down.
Yeah, constantly trying to keep it within the magic numbers of a green trail. But it genuinely is going to be really, really fun. I mean, I've only ridden what is
top half
of it, but because the bottom half hasn't been made yet. But we are getting there, getting on really well with it. So there's just a few pictures of this, which we have an idea of the name of it, but I'm not going to say that yet because it might turn out to be a different beast, might it, when it actually comes to fruition. So you can see here, so we use the borrow pit method. So we're sort of we have this amazing, beautiful aggregate, which is just below most of the site, isn't it? You have to sort of scrape back the topsoil a little bit and you'll find what we call the pay dirt, which you can see here. It's beautiful, it compacts beautifully, really hard wearing, lots of fines in it, and yeah, it's super stuff. So again, here a few more pickies. It does vary in colour a little bit going down the hill, doesn't it? But generally it's fairly standard, which is nice. So a little bit further on down there. So there we go. That is it basically. I'm going to stop sharing my screen a moment. I think it has stopped. Has it stopped sharing?
Yes, yeah, it has. Yeah.
So that sort of gives you a little bit of an idea what we've been up to and where we're looking to go, really.
Where we're at, where we're going.
Where we'd like to be is a little bit different to where we are, but I suppose if the storm's taught us anything, it's kind of not to sit back on your laurels and expect stuff to happen, because it nature has a way of sometimes throwing curveballs at you.
Cool. Thank you, guys. That's awesome. I've got those questions.
Go for it.
I might start with mine. But obviously, as usual, guys, have a think about any questions you want to ask and use the little hands up icon at the bottom of the screen. So going right back to the beginning, like what were you doing before you built that trail for your kids, and then Richard got in contact? What were you doing before that? What were your full-time jobs? How long you lived in the area? All of that stuff.
Well, I come from an engineering background, always been mountain bike mad, wanted to be involved in the industry. We were in a lucky position where I just actually finished building a house when we all decided to move out here. So we had a little bit of leeway, and the house was sold. We moved out here. And this sounds privileged, but we hadn't really worked out exactly what direction we were all heading in. But we'd all moved here together as a family. We'd all come from different areas.
I'd come from different backgrounds as well, but all with transferable skills.
Yeah. So
I could have gone and got a job here locally doing what I used to do, which was sales. Tom could have done the same. And it was just one of those things. We sold our house, you sold your house, and we came together with no plan, but not necessarily any firm plans. We were kind of quite chilled about it, really, in terms of quite sort of excited and see what the future held, really.
Yeah, and the bike park took off too quickly, really. But doing the event for Richard stopped us sorting out the accommodation. Yeah, we were meant to be building a new house here and all sorts of things to make living here more pleasant.
But hence the
plaster wall.
Yeah.
This is just us putting some insulation in, because that's all we can do for the moment. That's all we've got the headspace for.
Yeah. So yeah, and then the bike park became a thing and took off. We were challenged with space here. We've got about 60 acres, which is by far the smallest of the uplift venues. So we were initially a bit skeptical as to whether we'd be able to fit enough here on the farm. But a little bit of clever packaging and actually what we've managed to shoehorn in so far has been quite good. And there is definitely space for more comfortably in the future.
So how long? So how long had you physically been moved in for then? Like, I mean, how many years have you been there as a family?
We literally built the trail. That was the first thing that we did.
Yeah,
it was like
so we moved.
So you've been there less than 2 years, or less than 2 years, or
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah,
3 years.
We moved here in end of March 2022.
Yeah. But we started building the trail at the very beginning of April 22.
It was the first time the kids had obviously had a garden at the previous house, but Charlie's kids had never had the space that the farm provided. And
so it was literally like, can we build a trail? And we're like, yep, we can do that. No worries at all. We're on it. And
brilliant.
And hence it started. And in hindsight, that first trail probably wouldn't be where it was if we were thinking more long term about building a bike park. It was the convenient place to put something in and just tick a box and make them happy.
But it is now part of one of the trails.
Yes.
So yeah, we call it the OG part, don't we?
Yeah.
So there you go.
And so Alex, you were into mountain biking. What about you, Charlie? Was it just your kids who were into it, or were you a mountain biker too?
A little bit of both. I did a little bit of mountain biking in my kind of late teens and early 20s, and then I discovered motorbikes. And then I did I did sort of adventure motorcycling for the next sort of 10 years or so, and then I had the children, and then that kind of took a little bit of a backseat. And I finally gave up and sold my bike when I think the middle one was, he was about 2. So by which time the 2 of 3 children, because one wasn't born yet, but 2 or 3 kids were kind of already getting into cycling generally. I wouldn't quite call it mountain biking at that point. But then where we were before, we were super lucky because Forest of Dean was our local. And so it was kind of just like the natural thing, really. Uncle Alex was into his mountain biking. I'd done a little bit, kind of 15 years previous. And then I used to cycle a lot with, so this is kind of pre-COVID into COVID. I used to cycle a lot with the Dames, which is the women's group in the Forest of Dean. And then it was just sort of a natural progression, really. So the kids started to get into it a little bit more. I did too, and you were doing your thing, and then all of a sudden we were kind of this mountain biking family.
the kids ended up doing a race series, or doing the go downhill. Go downhill.
Go ride series, 417.
Yeah. All of them doing very, very well. Ben is a phenomenal rider. I'm just quicker than him still, but I think that might be because I'm slightly heavier than him. I think in out talent, I think if we weighted his bike up a little bit, he might be quicker than me.
We should weight his bike for races. Help you fast to do it.
No, don't want to know it. I've been quicker than him for as long as I can.
Yeah,
and you take the weights off when he's riding with you.
Put
them on for the races. That segues nicely into the next question. I mean, obviously you talked about racing at 417. You've obviously seen how the Forest of Dean works. I mean, how much inspiration did you take from other bike parks? I mean,
without wanting to sound super kind of negative about other bike parks, we kind of looked at other bike parks, visited most of them, all of them, between us, and we looked at how ways that we might be able to, with a fresh approach and a clever person that can see things differently.
We were coming from a background where none of us had worked in the industry. So we were looking at it not with, that's the way we do it because that's the way it's always been done. How will we go about it? So every aspect of it was our own take. Obviously, every bike park you go to is awesome because it's a bike park and we all love riding our bikes. That's the main issue. We love riding bikes.
Yeah.
Everybody does. But as a customer, whenever you go to other places, I know the bits that have annoyed me or bits that I've looked at and thought, I could do better than that. So yeah, we took obviously
inspiration in the sense of sort of the basic general idea, but we looked at every part of it to see how we might be able to wanting
to be able to replicate all of the great bits that they have and then just try and
tweak
the bits that make it more difficult. And in different scenarios, I've ridden with mates of mine and uplift trailers aren't a problem. If you're big enough and strong enough to lift your bike on, you just do it and you get on with it. But I've also ridden with the kids, and Charlie had an e-bike in the early days of e-bikes, and it was quite heavy to get onto the trailer. And loading our bikes I would be lifting my bike on and then
helping
lift
me
hers.
And then we were doing the kids, but the kids needed special straps because they were little bikes. And Williams, the youngest, didn't even fit on the trailer. It had to be in the van with us. And it's just like, so there's all these problems that we're like, well, we can do something about that. And I wouldn't say that they're problems necessarily, but it's ways that we could see that we could improve it, just to make the whole experience better for people, basically.
And then as far as the trails go, obviously every trail's got a slightly different feel to it. We've tried to make ours as fun as possible. We have tried to keep speeds slower probably than your average bike park for two reasons. One, obviously a slower crash hurts less chance of doing any major injury. The other thing is we're not a massive venue, and if we set off and did speed tuck 50-mile-an-hour runs down the hill, you'd be down far too quickly and you wouldn't be making much of your day. So the trails are always designed with
maximum fun,
maximizing the fun whilst still trying to keep everything in check. And some of the for instance, we definitely weren't the first, but we have some very natural, two of our trails are very, very natural feeling. They're much more akin to your classic off-piste trail. They aren't built to gravel. They are just scratched in. They were put in for the enduro with the intention that we would armour them as they wore out. And so far, touch wood, they're holding up remarkably well.
But also people really like the feeling of them.
And they're holding up well, and it's a good thing because they're probably some of the most ridden trails. They're not for everybody. Some people love the comfort of a big berm and nice hard pack underneath their tyres. But the single track stuff also, there's groups of people who'll come and spend the entire day
just sessioning
two trails. With I think the breath of fresh air of not having large hard pack berms to help you all the way you go. There's some of the sections are just flat corners in between the trees up in the top, in the grassland at the top. And there's an age bracket of rider who harks back to how brilliant early days of downhill were, when you were just blasting flat out down a hill without berms to save you.
Grass is on slippery grass quite a lot of the time.
The name of that trail is Earth Pig, but it gets called all sorts of things, from slippery pig to more
muddy pig, awful. And so far throughout last year, towards the end of the season, it was getting easier to ride in the dry because the grass was going and there was a bit more dirt to get your tyre stuck into. In the wet, it was becoming, it was always challenging. You either had wet grass or slippery mud.
It's very wet
for this year, with our increased numbers, we're actually planning on laying out 2 parallel tracks so that we can do kind of month about and allow the ground to recover a little bit without losing the feel of the trail, because at the moment it's still hugely popular.
And then we thought we could maybe have a little bit of
Yeah,
a dual
and
slalom as well.
if the right people turn up, and both of them might get open, because who doesn't like racing your mates?
But obviously
yeah.
it's not a race.
Yeah, not a race.
Well, there's loads of questions that spring from loads of different things you said there. But one, so I mean, did any of you have any trail building experience before you built that first trail?
Other than a little bit in the woods here and there.
Dicking about maintaining a few trails in some of the outer areas of the Forest of Dean, a little bit of that. No, not really. And we've
learned so much.
We made a lot of mistakes, and we also do things differently to other people now, where we believe our method is better.
It's different because our hill, the Hafod Hill, is the Hafod Hill, and you can take the skills that we've learned here and try to apply them in Avan or I don't know, Coed Brennan or something like that, and it would be completely different because it's not the Hafod Hill.
It's not. The terrain is different everywhere you go.
The dirt is different. Everything's different.
Yeah, I say we built our first trail, and had been using it, and then in the run up to the Enduro, we realised we'd need help. There's only 3 of us. It's an awful lot of work. Everything goes slowly because there's only 3 of us, and we're not in a position yet where we can employ somebody full time. We're hoping to very shortly, because that would make a massive difference. Particularly once we're open. I mean, Charlie helped extensively with the trails to start off with, but there's an awful lot more to the trail centre than just the trails. So although you help, you're also
I'm on
doing
that,
other things.
doing other things as well. So yeah.
But yeah, we got some professional help in, and from that professional help, more than what they did, what we learned from them was very, very valuable.
But they also learned some stuff
but
from us.
I think I think it was a two-way street, because again, it's that fresh approach, and there's always the way that's always been done, and that's just the way it is. But sometimes that way is the way it is, not for the right reasons. So there are little things we do differently, and there are definitely still mistakes we make. I'm an absolute bugger for digging 50 meters of trail without testing any of it, and you
don't get it wrong very often.
Don't often get it wrong.
Don't get it wrong very often.
But
sometimes I'll write down it and go, "Oh no, that's not right."
Usually it'll only be 1 or 2 tweaks, but we should definitely. It's in furthering or bettering ourselves. I do like sitting in my digger and thinking I'm getting it right, and occasionally.
Well, we've only had to change one thing. So far on this trail, we've built about 600 meters.
Yeah, we're about
600 or so. Yeah, 600 meters down the trail. We've had to tweak one 2 meter section that just impacted in slightly the wrong way on the following feature. So we thought it was the following feature that was the problem, but actually when you rode it, it wasn't. It was the preceding 2 meters before that. So we changed that, then that worked. So and
that was something.
Took 15 minutes.
It was definitely something I learned when we had the professionals helping. They rode things before they took too much time into finishing it, whereas I tend to like to sit in my digger, conclude I've got it completely right, get everything finished, then ride it and go, Most of the time it's like, that works really well, I like that. But just occasionally, you do.
Then you talk about doing things differently. Can you give us a sort of a tangible example of
that? Probably the simplest one was, because we're up in grassland, grass and turf is really difficult to deal with. And the professionals, I say professionals, I'd like to class myself as a professional now, but the hired help were removing the turf in large sections, laying it to the side, ready to be reused and relayed on the back of berms. Slow, heavy, even difficult with a digger, and the end result was never very good. We'd previously concluded that rotavating was much, much quicker. So we had
a rotavator.
So I've got a nice 6 foot wide rotavator on the back of the tractor, we mark out the trail, we establish where we're going. I will rotivate the whole area, then we remove the topsoil, which luckily is about the same depth as the rotavator. Put that in piles ready to build up on the back of the dug berms.
So all of the seed bank and everything is all in that soil. So it doesn't take long for that to turn back into turf, essentially, and grow again.
Ecologically, it works really well. But just as the machine operator, it's 200% quicker than trying to reposition pieces of turf nicely on the back of things. Inevitably, the turf dies because I'm gonna say it never settles down. Saves massive amounts of time, and I think it's a technique that the people we worked with looked at and thought, yeah, actually, that really does work. And that was just purely coming from a slightly different background, looking at it and thinking, this will be much easier to deal with if we rotivate. Flip side, what I learned from them, we were doing we weren't doing borrow pits. We were doing small quarries around the place, and the localized borrow pit and the efficiency of that was something I took from them.
So we were doing borrow pits, but they were just
we were doing borrow pits, but
and then moving it.
But we were doing one every couple of 100 meters. Whereas watching them work, because we have the aggregate universally all over the site so much, I'm never more than a digger arm away from the borrow pit I'm working in. And that was something that just hadn't occurred to me. I knew the stone was there, but my head wanted to take it from a quarry because a quarry made more sense for the quantities we were taking out. And we saved thousands of pounds on diesel for not transporting it around the place, and time. But it was just something that hadn't made sense. I couldn't get my head around digging hundreds of little borrow pits, but it's a superb method, obviously. Very much the done method. But if you've not been involved in the industry, that was something which we learnt, and definitely
we'd nearly got there on our own, but we were just thinking too big and not as localized as it's become. So
cool. That's really good. Both really good examples in both directions. So going back, and again, everyone else, feel free to stick your hands up and ask questions, but I'll carry on until people do. How did Richard find out from Western Bike Events, found out about your trails to even know to ask you?
I had a good friend I ride with who shared his social media post in late
21, wasn't it? Because it was before we got here.
He was advertising for landowners on places in the valleys. We're not in the valleys, but I gave him a ring just to say, got a farm, dead keen on mountain biking. We've got one trail here. If you want to come and build some trails and hold an event, we're game. He came and had a meeting. We had a good chat and a wander around. Concluded that although at the time he was kind of promoting the fact he was digging the trails, he'd taken on a little bit much with what he'd committed to build up at Walters Arena in Glenneath. And we'd enjoyed building the trails, so I thought we'd just build them. At the point where we were offering to build everything, we had over a year before he was planning to come and see us. I remember when the phone call came through, and he just said, any chance we could any chance we could come to you this year? And my initial reaction was it was a no. But my brain kind of, in like 30 seconds, my brain's turning it over, going, well, why is this no? How can we do this? What would we need to do? Because this would be fun. We took 24 hours to think about it, didn't we? Got back to him the next day. Told him I'd get back to him.
Like, kind of, go on then, give it a go.
Yeah, and unfortunately, from the moment we said we'd give it a go, that was yeah, you can't give it a go and fail. I've mountain biked for years. I'd never raced. I know what an enduro is, but I then I committed to doing a few of the rounds of his series to see it from the rider's side. And it was interesting because they varied very, very much from what we were planning, but each venue had its own feel. And Richard obviously has organised events for years for the military, but this was his first time going it alone. And I think he was learning an awful lot during those early events. It's a shame he lost a few of his followers because things didn't go perfectly, but nothing ever goes perfectly. Uh, yeah, and yeah, we decided we'd go for it. He was very supportive, although he was still flat out organising other rounds, so we didn't have any physical support from him.
I mean, to the point that we actually even taped it, didn't we?
Yeah,
Because
we
he
like I
didn't
say, he
have
didn't have
time.
time to tape it. He'd underestimated how long taping a field-based event would take, because obviously every single bit of it, because because some of the trails for the event were, as I say, just these. I mean, at the time they were mown paths in the long grass. It's very easy to take shortcuts if it's just a mown path and the long grass. So
And you'd be surprised how many people did.
and even did once it was taped, but that's a completely different discussion. And yeah, and the we decided we were going to do it, and once you said you're going to do something, you
got to commit.
Get on and do it. Probably the biggest challenge of all was the parking, because we have on the farm there was a flat, hard standing area, which is our parking for the bike park, but it's nowhere near big enough for the numbers he was talking for the event. We have a field over the road that was flat enough to make a car park, but it had a selection of springs in the gateway in the first few hundred meters into the field. So we started with working on that, putting a load of land drainage in, and then
many tons.
Yeah, probably about 400 tons of crushed concrete, and then blinded it off with stone, which is hilarious because that's a bit that nobody, people come to ride trails, but that was probably our biggest concern, was parking 300 cars. And we ran out of space there because so many people decided, I think because we were a bit further away from the rest of the events, people decided to come and camp. So each person that turned up only took 2 spaces because it was one for a car and one for a tent. The horror story was the first chap who turned up was bringing his family. So he parked his car, and then in the next 3 spaces, he put a tent up, one for him and his wife, and one for each of his children. So I was sat there going, no panicking. Luckily,
this is that's what everyone else is going to do as well.
Yeah, like my fear literally was, because at that point I knew we had no spare capacity, and like the first guy who turned up
took up
used four spaces, not one, which was hilarious. Luckily, being on the edge of Brechfa, we've got NRW Forest car park directly opposite, which I wasn't intending to use, but it was my overflow fallback car park, and yeah, we ended up with best part of 100 cars parked in there. So there was a grovelling apology to NRW in the subsequent weeks when when everything had settled down, because
we didn't burn any bridges.
No,
clearly you didn't, because you didn't get any objections to your planning, which brings me on to my next question. So obviously you don't need planning for a trail you only use for an event. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah.
But you built all these trails for the event, and you decided you were going to turn it into a bike park.
Yep.
So just talk us through that a bit more. Like how much detail did you need to go into in the planning application?
Okay, so there was all the usual stuff. So we had to do highways. We had to get the the highways, when they come and measure the cars and look at the speeds and the average speeds and visibility displays and all that jazz. We also had to get LiDAR done for the sight lines and things like that, either side on the road. And then working into the site, we were quite lucky that the access track was existing. What was our car park, or what is our car park, existed, not in the sense of a car park, but it was a brownfield site that the previous owners had done something with, so we didn't need to get planning permission for that because that was done.
We did have to have change of use.
Change of use on that.
So yeah, but the majority of the application was a change of use
rather than,
and they're very understanding. They'll apply change of use to just the area of the trails. So that was all measured, including the uplift and the car park, all at different planning rates because that's how it works.
So it was all very specifically calculated and worked out.
Stumbling blocks initially were sight lines.
Yep.
But we knew that was going to be difficult.
So sight lines for people leaving the property in their cars, turning onto the road. Right?
So our access is off a B road. It's not a particularly fast road. It makes the farm very convenient because a lot of these little Welsh farms are tucked up lanes, and I for one wouldn't want to drive 3 miles up a lane to come home every day. It would be frustrating and annoying. We're spoiled. But also, we knew we wanted to do something here. And I don't think we ever thought in terms of lots of cars turning up, but just HGV access and things like that. So we knew we had good access, but highways sightline requirements are very, very difficult to comply to. We had to achieve, at 60 miles an hour, you have to have 220 meters of visibility from a point that is, I think it was 2.5 meters back from the road and 600 mil from floor level. Well, actually, like 90% of council junctions don't comply with the sightline requirements. So the traffic survey was very useful because that brought the speed. They worked out the average speed of the road was 44 miles an hour. There's a table with all the speeds and the site requirements. Ours was brought down to 120 meters, which made it all feasible.
Yeah. And also, on top of that, the highways kind of improved the situation for us because we had to take out some trees. They put notices on these trees and told us that we needed to take them out because they were ash. So under the ash, with the ash dieback, we had all these marks on all of these trees. So actually, in the process of this, as two separate things, we actually improved the sightlines.
The one fixed the other, which is very handy. Other problems we had were dealing with NRW
phosphates.
Waste disposal. The massive bone of contention for most planning currently is how is the wastewater going to be dealt with, or not the wastewater, the waste going to be dealt with. I can't say I agree with the solution we have, but it is the solution that NRW were happy with. We have portaloos that are transported from here to Aberystwyth by licensed waste carrier to a site that treats that. Luckily, they're already on a run down here, emptying and cleaning them. So
they do all the toilets in Brechfa. So.
Right. Okay. So they're not charging you a ridiculous amount to do it because it's on their road anyway.
Lots of money.
But not quite as much otherwise, right? Yeah.
If you do the maths of the people who made money from the bike park last year,
they made a lot.
we didn't. We just lost less money than we had previous years. But the toilets did all right. Yeah. But I suppose that is what it is. What else was difficult?
Well, on the planning. So did you? Obviously, there were existing trails there you built for the enduro, but did you have to plan out the trails almost architectural drawings?
So we took GPS
GPS
files of all the trails. We had a planning consultant on board. I think we probably could have got to the solution or to the same conclusion, but having a planning consultant on board was very, very useful. Money definitely
well spent.
Yeah, definitely well spent. They helped us compile what we needed. So the planning application covered the existing trails and the proposed new trails, which has got us going and got everything sorted.
Well, that was going to be my next question. So, like, did your application include all the trails you're yet to build? I mean, will you have to go back at a certain stage once you've built
there will be a point where we may want to tidy some things up. Things will have changed enough, but generally, having now set the precedents, the planners have accepted that trails will happen, and it was just an indication of what would be happening.
Okay.
It might be one of those.
So you're not locked in, basically. You can build very much what you want on the hill.
Yeah,
within reason. Yeah. I think within reason.
And I think maybe if we did anything to upset the planners, they may question things. But on the whole, the planning officer came here. He
unannounced,
turned up unannounced whilst the application was in, to basically have a look, because I think if you don't know what a mountain bike trail is, it'd be very hard to pass judgment on it. And he seemed very, very relaxed about everything we were doing. He did say he can't condone the fact that we'd already built a load of stuff, but it did make it much easier for him to understand what's going on. One of his major concerns was actually the uplift track. He had no idea what the uplift track would consist of.
He wanted to see how much was there already.
Yeah.
And so I sort of showed him. I took him up the hill and I said, "Oh, this is where the track came to," and then it sort of petered out into like a kind of a sheep trail essentially. So we just followed that when we were building it.
And we'd already put that in just for us to have vehicular access up and down. So the bottom half is the old access to the farm, which had been moved at some point. So there was already it's half tarmac, half cut down to bedrock, but there's already a quarter of a mile of track. First half was done. The second half was field access, which was stoned, and the top little bit we added. It got us all the way up to the top of the farm at all seasons.
Yeah,
we had to add turning circles and things like that, but they were easy to explain what we were doing at that point. He was very happy with the fact, not that it made any difference really, but he liked the fact that all of the stone came from a quarry on site, and he didn't affect his decision, but he liked that.
Like the fact that it was sustainable, and he liked what we'd done with the tree planting and all the rest of it. So we didn't do any of it to tick the planning boxes. It just happened to tick them, if that makes sense.
Well, that was going to be my next question before I hand over to Dan. He's got a question, which was about the tree planting. Was that like a deliberate strategy because you thought that would help with your planning, or was that a requirement?
No, bike parks need trees. Right. They just do. When mountain biking and trees are synonymous. Really.
When we decided to put the application in, which was the September, the September, we were coming up to planting season, so we thought we'd plant. We were going to do.
You're a year out. We'd already planted them.
We'd already planted all the trees.
Yeah.
The
years fly.
We were talking about getting, because obviously there's all sorts of tree planting grants, and we were going to do a grant, but very, very difficult not difficult to apply for, but they take a couple of years, and you miss planting seasons.
But also you have to plant what they want you to plant in the way that they want you to plant it.
Yeah.
We don't want to create another Brechfa Forest. That's not what we want. We wanted to have an amenity woodland.
Yeah.
We chose
a bit more detail. Mum and Dad live here on the farm with us. They planted up all the fields that surrounded our old house as kids, and so we watched them. You know, then we'd have been 6, 7, I suppose, when they planted them. So we watched all of that grow through our childhood,
and it's beautiful now. You go back there now, and it's lovely.
Yeah, so the trees are pushing 30 years old.
Yeah, that dates
a little bit more than really bad math. Just over 30. Yeah, they're not pushing. They pushed
25 maybe. Yeah.
And it's lovely because it's a really well established little woodland now.
Yeah.
And I suppose what we were doing with the tree planting is the same thing for the next generation. The farm here was never going to be sustainable as any kind the grassland was crap. There's some nice quite nice species, but they weren't. It wasn't really like sort of agricultural sustainability there. There was and because it's been paired off another farm at some point, there's not enough acreage to support. Yeah, you can never support the farm itself.
If it worked as a farm, it would have worked as a farm, but there's several failed generations of farming that have happened here. And although we had some goats, that was purely just to get rid of the brambles and stuff like that, and they did a brilliant job at that. But it doesn't work. There's not enough grassland to make it worthwhile. It's very sadly been historically very badly managed. So the grassland that is here hasn't been well grazed.
The woodland that we have is actually, like I said, the woodland is pasture that's been ignored to the point where, you know,
nature's come
back. Yeah. Which I mean, it's in some ways it's very nice, but also it's unviable as a farm. So it's one of the things that enabled us to buy it. The property didn't really tick boxes for anybody.
Too big for a small holding, too big and not great. Didn't work as an equestrian place.
A bit
too steep, and not big enough to be a farm. So but
some idiot mountain biker saw it and go, "Oh, that'd be a fun place to own. Let's move there. That was great." Yeah. And
all right, well, cool. Look, Dan, you've got a question.
Yeah, go on.
Hey folks, great to hear your story. I've been tracking you for quite a while.
Thank you
for your support.
Yeah, thank you for your sharing.
That bit's easy. I'm just curious about how you've gone about financing and funding. Just thinking about the model, really, whether it's sort of like self-funded. Have you looked at community grants? What's your payback?
By all of us moving in together, that's how it's basically been funded.
We've sold 2 houses.
Sold 2 houses. I didn't live in a house. I lived in a narrow boat. That went. All that money was put into it. We're very lucky with parental support. They seem to enjoy watching us lose stroke spend their money. And on paper, obviously, we're probably at about the most painful point currently. Getting open into year 1 was a lot of money to spend. Last year,
it washed its face. We weren't hemorrhaging money at
the same
level.
Yeah. So, and we bought quite a lot of equipment and things, which spent more money probably on that than we were planning, and some of it wasn't right, so we've done some swapping around of stuff.
Everything's washed its face, hasn't it? So things that we've bought, we've sold on for similar money to what we've paid. So it's a lot of money, but at the same time,
last year I think probably would have been last year would have been better, apart from we bought our 5.5 ton Kubota with the tilt rotator.
Which incidentally was an absolute game changer for trail building. But
we had a mini digger with a tilting bucket, which was
fine,
perfectly adequate, and we had a lot of fun digging lots of things. And then we bought a real digger, and it was more money than we were ever planning to spend on a single piece of equipment. But
it has, in terms of what it gives back in return, is phenomenal. And so self-funded, yes. We don't seem to kind of, I have looked into grants, don't get me wrong, but we don't seem to kind of tick any boxes for grants.
yeah, it's a difficult one because all of the ones to help new businesses, we never tick them.
It's often based on kind of job creation or job retention, whereas we'd rather it take a little bit longer and we try and do it ourselves. I think at the moment we're at that point where, as Alex said, we're nearly able to get somebody here to help us. It's not going to be full-time, is it? But a part-time trail person. I would say trail crew, but it's one singular. I don't know what that is. But to join us, which is going to free you up a little bit. But also just sort of kind of just join the team. He seems to be
bringing in a bit more knowledge, because there are gaps in our knowledge, and
but he seems to be kind of a good all rounder that will kind of turn his hand to anything, which is kind of what we need, because we sort of have this motto of as well as looking at things differently and seeing how we can improve on them, we also, if we can do it ourselves, we do it ourselves.
Yes, it saves
a huge amount of money,
but at the cost of time, and obviously time is money. And possibly if we'd have got some help in a couple of years ago,
we'd be further down the process. But we'd be poorer. So I don't know. It swings and roundabouts, isn't it? Really. Yeah. But it'd be nice to take a wage at some point.
Yeah. It's I'm going to say there's definite discussions. None of us are on particularly new bikes anymore, because buying ourselves a new bike is not money we can afford to spend.
We just keep them going, don't we? Really?
Yeah.
This is where you need a bike sponsor for the park, who at least will sell you bikes at the trade price at the very least, right?
Yeah,
not give them to you. Maybe they let you keep them for a year and then you give them back and you get next year's model again. I mean, there's different models, aren't there?
We've got close with a kids bike manufacturer who want.
They're in, but they just need to work out the details.
They want a demo center, which we're literally perfect for kids. I mean, we're
perfect for an adult demo center either.
But for the kids one, we'd work really well. We've got kids, but
willing testers.
Yeah, but I can't ride a kid's bike, so that one's no help to me.
No. Talk about doing everything yourselves. And again, everyone, please put your hands up if you've got questions. I am going to bring it to an end in 11 minutes, which is 5:30. So if you haven't got questions, but you do want to sort of talk to the group about anything, again, put your hand up. But until I see hands, I'm going to keep going. Going back to doing stuff by yourselves. You talked about all those plans you had to put together. Like, how did you even know what plans you needed?
I don't know. It's a little bit on in terms of what
the health. So are you talking about the kind of health and safety and?
I don't know. That's the point. Is how do I even know what plans you need?
So in the big picture, digging a trail down the hill, it doesn't really matter how you dig it. It's dirt. You got to move it. Everything else has been a lot of research. We were helped out massively with the planning with a planning consultant. We would have been able to put together a proposal. It probably would have been turned down because we would have been missing so much. But the planning consultants were superb.
Very good.
Thinking of things we've never thought of. But then in terms of all of the traffic management plans and all of that lot, that has predominantly, I mean, you've put them all together, but that was with the help of Ash.
So that's who I said about Mentrabach up in Tingethla. He's incredibly knowledgeable. He basically, he was a friend of a friend of a friend type thing. One of those really cool introductions.
You need to talk to Ash.
You need to speak to Ash. Okay. So Ash, he basically specializes in health and safety for extreme sports and activities. And he basically came about his position because he was being told no, but they couldn't tell him why no. When he wanted to do a certain extreme activity, they being insurance companies and stuff like that. He's like, well, I can do it. I shall do it. I shall prove to you I can do it. So, and then the rest is history for him. but he's a thoroughly knowledgeable guy, and he basically pointed me in the right direction with stuff. I went away and did some research. Writing's like my thing. I can do that. I don't necessarily enjoy it, but I am capable of doing it. So I'd create these documents and send them over to Ash, and what do you think? And he'd come back, and yeah. So it was just a case of, well, I looked into what I needed to run the business, essentially.
Yeah, risk assessments, all of it. So much more than you.
Yeah,
obviously
so
risk
much
assessments are really common now, but so much more depth than you think you need. And then even through to insurance waivers. We don't have an insurance waiver or an acceptance of risk as such.
Well, we do. It's just by a different name,
yeah.
because we wanted to. This again, talking about why do things because they've always been done that way. That's the right way. That's not necessarily the case. So I looked at the other bike park waivers, risk assessment, what they call risk acknowledgements. And I was like, oh my God, yawn, so difficult to read, so difficult to understand. You kind of go scroll. It's like the Apple terms and conditions.
Yeah, you don't read them. You just sign.
Update, yeah. So there's one particular bike park. I don't think they need to be named, but their risk assessment, their risk acknowledgement, I keep calling it the wrong thing, is 6,000 words long. 6,000 words. I nearly fell asleep twice reading it. And
I'll hold my hand up. I've ridden there and I've never read it. So I sign something every time I want to ride there, just so I can ride. But possibly I should know what's in it.
Well, anyway, theirs is a slightly different site to us. So we do have the flexibility that our site is our own, and we don't have anyone else breathing down on it. I don't want to give too much away because it'd be obvious who it is, but ultimately it had to be something that was readable, understandable, quick, succinct, but it says exactly the same thing. It just says it in a slightly different way. Little things like the font that I used, it's dyslexic friendly. He has dyslexia, I have dyscalculia. So we get that, we understand that. And that's another thing that was super important for us to get right for people. So our risk acceptance, we call our rider pledge, because risk acceptance is like that's crap. I can't even say it at 9:30 at night. But so a rider pledge, it's basically some super simple rules that just keeps everybody safe. But they're also, our insurance company was happy with them in terms of people accepting that risk to ride here, but it just says it in a slightly different way.
Cool. Okay, we've got 5 minutes left, roughly. So going back, so the other thing is obviously your trailer, which is obviously. So is that your own design? Did you build it yourselves?
Yeah,
I painted it.
Yeah, I obviously had many late nights thinking about it. I knew how I wanted to do it. It draws on inspiration from some other methods of doing it, but the main thing is the design brief was a kid had to be able to lift their bike on and load it, and it also had to take a big adult's bike. It's now
with no risk of damage to
with no risk
no
risk of damage. There's nothing worse than having a bike damaged on an uplift trail. I've never had mine damaged, but I've witnessed bikes damaged, and it's not fun. It's not what we, if you crash whilst riding, you crash whilst riding. So yeah, it had to do those things, and yeah, we probably didn't need to do it, but it is awesome to watch a group of kids arrive at the bottom, throw their bikes on, and be sat in the uplifts waiting for their parents to get down the hills, because that's how it works. It's one lever over the center latch that clamps some bars on the tires, so it'll accept everything from a 3-inch wide tire down to a 1.8-inch wide tire. If you're riding a fat bike, that's a life choice, and we'll deal with you. And if you're on anything narrower than 1.8, you probably shouldn't be riding our trails, because you're probably on the wrong sort of bike. So it covers everything we need it to cover. cost us a small fortune probably to make it, if to be honest. But
you fabricated it yourself, like on the farm.
Yeah. So that's my background. So I designed it first of all in CAD. I come from an engineering background where I did a lot of CAD design, but I also had the privilege to be able to bring those ideas through to fruition. So
because you're a welder fabricator by trade, but you add that engineering side in as well. So,
So it was CAD designed, all modelled up, probably upwards of a few hundred hours sat designing it, and then and the actual trailer itself isn't anything very special. It's just the bike clamping mechanism, which was just built around complete universal clamping use of wheelbase doesn't matter. Bikes luckily have stopped getting longer. They get to a point where bikes won't be able to be transported sideways or on the way trends were going, but luckily the industry seems to have pulled back from that, and it clamps everything on, and it works here because the uplift vehicles. I don't think Charlie actually had a photo of that. We run Hiluxes, which we've now got. Oh, she did have a photo.
Yeah.
But they've now got
the Hiluxes are what, minivans?
No, pickup truck.
Pickup truck.
Pickup trucks, right? Sorry, yeah.
Four-wheel drive pickup truck, and we've got a whole new rear tub that's got 12 seats on it. So we take 12 people at a time.
12 bikes, 12 people.
12 bikes, 12 people. It takes a minute and a half for everyone to load their bikes. It's longer for people just to all congregate at the bottom. It's 2 minutes 20 seconds to the top of the hill, and then it's 30 seconds for everyone to unload. It just
works. If you look at bang for your buck, if you compare about how much downhill you get in a day here versus how much, if you look at actual kilometers of downhill riding, the uplift takes you right to the very top of our hill. So there's none of that kind of pedal up. It's the top. And
you could ride you could ride every single trail top to bottom without a chain, without putting a crank in,
it just works. So the whole process is really quick.
Run times for your average rider are 2.5 minutes. So in theory, you can get a run every 15 minutes or so if you're relaxed. My dad was doing the uplift driving last year. And if he had a group of people who were particularly on it, he did 44 runs in the day. So the lads were all pretty flat out. 44 runs. They're slightly shorter than some of the other bike parks, but still 44 times down the hill.
Yeah, that's insane. I think the most I ever managed myself at an uplift venue was, I think, 20 odd at the Forest of Dean. But that was when you caught up the van in front of you as a rider, and then you get on and go up. Well, I mean, that brings us on to capacity before I bring it to a close. So, I mean, is that it then? So 12 riders?
No.
We did 12 last year. It worked really well. With the one vehicle, it was 0 waiting around, and we knew where 12 people were on site at all times, so we could put all our procedures into place. At our closing party, it was the first time we actually did it. I had a second uplift vehicle, which we just had as a spare, but we
had 50.
Yeah, we ran 2 vehicles with 50 people, and there was no more. There was no more waiting around. It just
worked.
50 people, and of those 50 people, if you were committed, you could have done your 40+ runs in the day.
So you built a second trailer exactly the same as the first?
Exactly the same, apart from I'm a bugger for changing things. It's exactly the same,
but better,
but slightly better. And if there was a third one, it would be slightly different again. I wouldn't say better a second time, but
we're actually limited by our car parking space.
Yeah.
The site and our processes can handle more than our car park will allow.
Right. And also, upon position, you're planning as well, or does your planning allow for more than...
No, there's no restrictions put on the application whatsoever, which is really lucky.
And if we this year, basically our target this year is to try to get to the point where we're filling 36 slots a day. That's our that's what we're targeting in terms of our growth, and if we manage that, we'll be really happy. and then maybe next year
We might
that'll
aim
give
for
us. I'm going to say that'll
48.
give us the confidence to then try and increase car parking and some of the other facilities, and just try and grow
the
a little
business.
bit organically. We are always going to be challenged by the fact we're a long way west, and although there's a lot of people in Pembroke,
Come over this
all the way
way.
up to Aberystwyth, because obviously there's quite a large biking community on the coast. A lot of them, you know, they ride up in Brechfa Forest, Cody Brennan, and all of those places, and we're much closer than Bike Park Wales. It is still a much smaller population than, you know, the big cities that are within a couple of hours of Bike Park Wales. You've got, you know, Bristol, 30 minutes down the road.
Yeah.
Birmingham, hour and a half. So we're always going to be challenged with that.
But that's okay. But
Yeah,
we're okay with that. We're not trying to be Bike Park Wales. We're not trying to be that destination venue. We're trying to be our own thing.
Yeah, not so much myself, because I'm a little bit antisocial and I don't talk to that many people. But Charlie could probably, or would, recognise every single person who has ever ridden here.
Yeah.
And we're going to get bigger than the point where
I'm not going to be able to.
Yeah, that won't be a thing. But that was one of the nice things.
But at the end of every day, I could tell you everybody's name, and unless they maybe changed their clothes, and I was not able to associate their name with their Troily red trousers or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's that kind of family feel, and that for me has been. I know that we're pushed for time, but that has for me has been the most phenomenal thing. The community that we have been able to build from this place, the people that hadn't met until they came here and then are now best biking buddies that bike with each other every week and stuff like that. It's just lush. It's just absolutely fantastic.
The last Friday I was riding at a small it's
a kind of a community woodland.
Yeah, it's a community woodland which Hafod Trails, Finoni, which is to the west of us, about an hour away. And I had one of our Hafod Trail cycling tops on, and yeah, two lads, you know, recognised who we were and started chatting. And I had met them, which was nice because quite often I haven't met them. But yeah, it's a community where people do recognise, and you know,
yeah,
and yeah, we've given local riders somewhere. There's like a centre, centre hub and somewhere to come.
Yeah. Well, that's a really nice place to end it. Like, yeah, and really, yeah. Well, it's amazing what you guys have achieved, and it's been amazing to hear your story. So thank you very much for sharing it with us. Thanks to everyone that joined us on the call. Sorry, I've dominated the questions, but I had a lot of questions as well, so I've got more here that we haven't got to. I wrote down as you were talking. But yeah, thanks so much, guys.
Thank you. It's been a really interesting process for me, actually, to go back. And I think when you're in the moment, you forget of all of the crazy shenanigans that we've got up to. So yeah, it has been great. It has been really good. So thank you. And thank you everybody for listening as well. It's been super. And if there are any questions that anyone wants to ask, just drop us an email at info@hafodtrails.co.uk. And I'll be more than happy to answer any questions.
Cool. All right, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Cheers.
Bye.